Hey guys, welcome to Night Owls. I hope this works okay. We have a different kind of setup where Sasha and I, as you probably noticed, we're actually in the same room. The reason we're not, oh, we got a little echo going. You got that? We're gonna may have an echo because we're in the same room and mic, so we're gonna try to mute when we're not speaking. But it's good to be here. Thank you for coming. Sasha got off work a little early, so we're starting a little early. And we'll try to go back and forth as we do this. And I want to thank, first of all, I did get a postcard from Cody, this one right here. Thank you, Cody, for that. That's really nice. And yeah, usually when we're together, we kind of sit next to each other, but I have a splitter and I left that back at the home. So it's a little bit different tonight. So we'll try to make it work with the technology. If you guys have questions, feel free to super chats, power chats, stream elements. I appreciate them all. And if you're new to Night Owls, welcome. We do this some Fridays, not every Fridays, but we have a good time. We just talk about culture, events, and everything. And I guess I will just go ahead and kick this off, and then I'll mute my mic. So, Sasha, what was your general thoughts of the DNC?
I didn't watch it really. I saw clips of it. I mean, all it was to me was they just lied about everything. And then they talked about billionaires and rich people and how many people on that stage were rich and how many of those people made their money off the taxpayers. Because it's like Obama, Bill Clinton, all of them didn't have any money. And then now they're all worth like millions of dollars. So I don't know. They're a bunch of hypocrites and it's hard to stomach.
Yeah, I didn't really see a lot of it. I just saw clips too. It wasn't my thing really to watch. I've heard various opinions. Some thought it was good, others thought it was kind of slow. It was more about marketing than actual policy decisions. But what's interesting about Kamala, she's actually just stealing some Trump's positions, like the no tips on taxes. She's trying to claim that for her own. I don't think she naturally has many real positions of her own. They're just trying to market her. And I think they're really trying to go for the white woman demographic. That's part of the reason they're calling JD Vance is weird, which is strange because JD Vance is just like a normal guy. Walz, that's a weird guy. But I think, it's like if you're a women, very pack oriented, if someone calls one guy a weirdo or a creeper, that gets all the women kind of in the same space. So I think they're trying to do that with JD Vance.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they just try to smear anybody, but yeah, her VP, that guy gives me the creeps. And I said, I don't know, I feel like we're being ruled by the alien people in the movie They Live. Like our politicians, like Kamala Harris has no soul. Like, let's be real, she's so fake. And she just changes her positions depending on what will get her like further up the ladder. And then that whole we can't fail down. It's like, yeah, or fail up. Yeah, Kamala Harris did. Nobody even voted for her. Wasn't she the first to drop out during the primaries last time? I think she was, right, on the Democrat side.
Yeah, when she ran for the Democrat primary in 2020, she got less than 2% of the vote. And she had a lot of, at the time, and Trump brought this up, she was really running not as a black woman, but as an Indian. And she had, because Silicon Valley's heavily Indian now, and they thought she was the new hip, cool girl to run, even though now she's 60 years old. She's not like a really young woman. But they try to do that. And she had no popularity. And the only reason Joe Biden picked her, and this is why we say she's a DEI pick. A lot of people say, "Oh, DEI, that's just a code word for the N word." It's like, well, no, no not really. Clarence Thomas wasn't a DEI pick. A DEI pick is when you pick someone specifically for their race or their sex or now their sexual perversion. And it wasn't us, it was Joe Biden at the time said, I'm going to pick a woman of color. So he didn't say, I'm going to try to pick the best candidate. He just said he wanted a woman of color. So, yeah, she never really did anything on her own. She got allegedly her first position because she had an affair with Willie Brown, who was married at the time. Supposedly, she sucked his you know what to get the position. And then she was in California politics for a while, and again, it was more of a diversity thing. She got in, and then she was picked as the VP nominee, and based on Biden's own words, because she was a black female. As a vice president, she was probably the most unpopular vice president we've ever had. She didn't really do anything. She's supposed to have a history of being a very lazy person and very unpleasant to work with. Her staff, she changes staff quite high because I don't like her. She's kind of got that drunk vibe about her where she's always cackling, but behind the scenes, she can be a real bitch. And so they gave her the position to be the border czar when the optics looked bad on the border. And she never went to the border. She just blew off that whole assignment. And they were trying to retcon that. So yeah, she's in many ways a weak candidate, but they're trying through marketing to make her like she's the best thing ever now.
Yeah, I don't know. They said, a lot of people look at the betting odds, and I guess Trump is ahead again. And they said that's like that usually does not happen during the DNC. Usually people get a bump, and it's been the opposite because of the way they behave and her campaign. So I don't know. I think he could win if there's no shenanigans. I really do. And the RFK endorsement today, I think is good for Trump because I think a lot of people, maybe that were on the fence or said they'd vote RFK, kind of like Joe Rogan, then they might actually vote for Trump.
Yeah, I forgot about Joe Rogan. Yeah, he did support RFK. I think Joe Rogan did that partially because he didn't want to get too much pushback for supporting Trump, so that was the safe option. RFK Jr. supporting Trump, it really is pretty major in American history. As you know, when we drove to Colorado, we listened to the dirty history of the Kennedys. But the Kennedy family, since really Joe Kennedy, so before even the 60s, they were a powerful, started in Massachusetts, but then it went through the country, dynasty for the Democrats. They were kind of like a combination of like the Clintons and the Obamas put together. And it was just assumed that if you were a Kennedy, you had a good chance of becoming president. You're guaranteed to be a senator in Massachusetts, and very liberal. And so one Kennedy supporting a Republican, that's unheard of almost that that would happen. And but Sasha, you want to talk? I think we'll talk a little bit about Kennedy, but what was all that dirt about Kennedy? This Kennedy, RFK Jr., some of the stuff he did that wasn't so great.
Well, didn't his wife commit suicide? Wasn't like that what it was? Like she committed suicide and they ended up moving her grave or something. I think he kind of had a thing for the ladies too.
Yeah, that's something all the Kennedys had a lot of affairs, and it supposedly his wife was distraught and she committed suicide, and then they buried her in the Kennedy plot, but then he had her dug up, moved away. Again, this was like that gossip lady that wrote the book, but all the Kennedys have been pretty strange that way. But this is a thing, and I'm not condoning it, but it seems that powerful men, I can think of Bill Clinton, I can think of, John F. Kennedy was a notorious womanizer, and Bill Clinton, boy, he was a hound dog even on his days in Arkansas. And we know Donald Trump, he went with a lot of the women. I'm sure he's had affairs. It seems like men in politics, they tend to have more affairs than the average guy. And I would think it's a little because they're kind of popular, they're out there, and they also tend to be kind of glib with their tongues and charismatic. Do you think that's the case with politicians?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like rock stars. Like any time that you're like around lots of people and you're famous or powerful, people are going to want to sleep with you. I mean, it's not like any of these guys had any trouble getting women. Like where it'd be harder for like the average guy. They're politicians and they can do favors for you. so people can take advantage of them too. So
Yeah, that's one thing. I don't get the vibe that JD Vance has ever cheated on his wife. I don't think he necessarily would. I mean, he could. I mean, everyone's human. But Trump, you definitely could see it. RFK Jr., I could definitely see it. Bill Clinton, of course. And supposedly Joe did too, which I believe back in his day when he was younger. So that's just kind of standard for, I was going to say Hollywood, but also Washington, D.C. The difference is back in the day with John F. Kennedy, the reporters, they all knew it. He had a lot of affairs, including with Marilyn Monroe, but they kind of had a gentleman's agreement to try to cover that up as best as possible and try to have an image that really wasn't the case.
oh, the book is called Ask Not by Maureen Callahan, the book about the Kennedy women. Um, but yeah, I don't know. The thing like with JD Vance, I kind of feel like I grew up with people kind of like him. Like he was like kind of probably a dork in school. He's kind of like the fat kid. And I don't know, he seems kind of more relatable to me than like even like somebody like Trump because he did grow up poor. Whereas like most of the politicians, they all talk about billionaires and everything. Like most of the people there, they talk about JD Vance going to Yale. Most of those people went to Ivy League schools. And I believe didn't Bill Clinton go to Yale too?
I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up, but I it was weird during the convention. I didn't see it, but supposedly Tim Walz was like trying to mock JD Vance because, oh, you went to Yale, but where I went to school, no one went to Yale. I'm like, yeah, you're probably all dumb shits. And going to Yale, especially when you're a white guy and you don't get the DEI, so you have to do it on your own merit, is pretty impressive. And I do think JD Vance is a very smart guy. I don't care. I'll simp a little bit for JD Vance because I think I followed him before he was even picked as a nominee. I was the guy that was interested in him because he's kind of like our guy in many ways. And yeah, I know he's married to an Indian, but he's really picked up on a lot of the our sphere of politics and the things he has said. I know he used to be more liberal, but he's definitely changed. And I really liked him. I think he's young, he's articulate. He comes across as the opposite of weird when he talks to people. And I think he will do very well compared to Tim Walz, who Tim Walz is younger than me. And I'm not saying I look super young, but Tim Walz looks like he's 75 years old.
Tim Walz looks really old. He gives total creeper vibes. Tucker said he gives him the creeps. And I kind of thought that too. Like there's something really off with him. And the way they let Minnesota burn down, or not Minnesota, I'm sorry, Minneapolis. Well, I guess Minnesota, but Minneapolis is the big city. And then his wife, like, oh, I smelled the rubber from the tires with the window open. Why would you want to do that? And then I heard also that his daughter tipped off the protesters, like, hey, they're going to come, so just get out of there. So I don't know. Everything about those people screams like creep, and all his shit's lies. Whereas JD Vance, at least, like, he grew up kind of poor, and I think it's kind of cool that he got to go to Yale and do that. And Bill Clinton did go to Yale. I looked it up.
Who else went to Yale is Jared Taylor. So a lot of good people went to Yale. And yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I want to get this super chat in. Thank you. I don't want a win, just a win. I want a freaking landslide that can't be stolen by printing machines. Yeah, that'd be nice if it could be a huge landslide, and it could be electoral landslide for Trump if he wins all these battleground states. But I think each of these battleground states is, the way I look at it now is 50-50. It's really close in every state. And so it could go either way. And I guess I'll throw this out to you, Sasha. What's your opinion of Nick Fuentes because he's upset, and I don't want to do a straw man, because he does this weird game like, no, I'm not opposed to Trump. I'm just opposed to his campaign. Unless his campaign gives in to my demands, like getting rid of the campaign manager. And I don't think he likes JD Vance, so maybe getting rid of JD Vance. I'm going to send my groypers to a key battleground state of Michigan. Come here, sign up on my website, and then we'll go in Michigan and we'll get the Muslims to, he didn't say vote for Kamala, but not vote for Trump. What do you think of that strategy in general and what's happening there?
Look, there have been like problems with Trump's campaign, like everybody knows it. Like you can see where there's been issues, but I don't think it's wise to try to get people to either not vote or vote for her. And like, look, I get Trump has lots of flaws, he does, but the economy was good at least until COVID. Like I remember because I was making quite a bit of money. I was selling stuff and I had two jobs at the time, but it was, I don't know, everybody seemed like they were doing better, and then COVID came and it was like bam, the economy was kind of like wiped out. And then those checks, and then with all these wars and inflation and everything else, I just don't think it's a smart move to tell people to go, and it's kind of suspect. I don't know. I don't know why people listen to somebody that's never had a real job and doesn't. I mean, he doesn't. Does he still live with his parents? I don't know. Maybe he finally moved out, but I know for a long time he lived with his parents, and I don't know how come he didn't go to jail after January 6th when everybody else did. And there's like a picture of him with a guy that people said was an informant. It's on Kiwi Farms. So I don't know. There's just a lot of sussy shit. And I don't think trying to help that witch get in is a good idea. Like he just seems kind of butthurt about it, about Trump, because he pretended he didn't know who I was.
Yeah, well, both campaigns have condemned Nick Fuentes. The Trump campaign has, and so has his. He obviously admires Kamala because he made the statement once that Kamala, like he's coconut like Kamala, and Kamala, he's like Kamala is a hot messy bitch, and I'm a hot messy bitch too, which is a strange thing for a straight guy to say, but Nick said that. And so he does like Kamala, but the Kamala camp, they have totally disowned him too. So he's kind of like the old Richard Spencer. Both sides are disowning. And my theory is this is a way to try to appear relevant. Michigan is going to be a tough state for Trump anyway. I don't think Nick Fuentes can really influence it one way or the other. But if it should go for Kamala, then Nick's statement will be like, see, I'm really like a power broker for the GOP. And if you want to get anything, you better go through me because I have this vast army of groypers that will make the difference. So it's a way of jumping in front of a parade and pretending you're leading it. It's kind of a cheap trick. It's done. Nick's not the first one to do this. This is common in politics. People do this. So I don't see this really having a big impact. And to be honest, it's the idea of a bunch of groypers talking to a bunch of Somali Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan. This seems kind of funny to me.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. I don't know. I think the whole thing's pretty cringe. And if you say anything about it, then you get an army of like douchebags in your comments and everything too. And it's like, guys, chill the fuck out. Like he's not the savior. He's not going to save you. Like I don't know what they think. I don't know. Feel like you got a lot of hate, and it's like, well, you've been around a long time. You've seen all this shit. You're smarter than a lot of these people, and I don't think that's a good argument just to call someone a boomer.
Yeah, I think he called me a bitter boomer, and I almost said, well, it's better than being, and I won't say the word here on YouTube, but I didn't. I took the high road. And yeah, it's just like this isn't my first rodeo, and it's frustrating because when you're trying to build something outside the mainstream or influence the mainstream, I really think we have too. And I'm not taking all the credit for it. A lot of people have on the right. That's not the mainstream Jeb Bush right. I think our ideas have really influenced the Republican Party, especially the younger people like Vivek and J.D. Vance and others about Israel, about wars, about the economy. What's the purpose of a nation? J.D. Vance just came out and said America's more than just an idea, it's a people. So that's I know he's got an Indian wife, but he did say that. So I think our ideas are really getting out there. But the thing we've always struggled, at least I have, because I've been in this since 2008, is it attracts either weirdos or feds or bad actors. And then they try to damage it by associating it with you know who, Mustache Man, or they just go totally crazy. And what's your thought about, did you see that Lucas Gage? He was, if, in case his name used to be Angelo Gage. I met him once at a, I think, an MPI conference. And he used to, I think, write for the Daily Stormer. Then he got out of that. He thought that was a bad deal. And he wanted to reinvent himself as being more like America First, just kind of drop all that baggage. And he did for a while. And I think even Elon Musk retweeted him because he was like a Marine or ex-Marine that was for peace and against the military industrial complex. And then he kind of got associated with America First, and he went down that rat hole that we see so many times about that one question, a group of people, which I bring up all the time. I talk about, I mean, my video today talked about Israel and how we're all subservient to them. But some people, they just get fixated on this. And now supposedly Lucas Gay says his wife left him and it was because of this group of people. What's your thinking about all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I don't think it was their fault that his wife left him. It's probably because he's obsessed. And I don't know, it's like maybe you should go outside, touch grass, as they say, because I don't know. You're perpetually online, and he really thinks, yeah, like we get it, there's problems with certain groups, but it's like, I don't think they're responsible for your personal life with your wife.
Sorry, I didn't get my mute button undone quick enough because I was looking. We got a couple of the rants I want to go over. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's
And
hard to do this when you have to mute, like remember to mute every time he says, because I expect you to jump in, and I'm like, oh, wait, because usually when we talk, I don't know, you know what I mean? He forgot the splitter, so that's why we have to do it this way.
yeah, and actually, in some ways, I was thinking it's better because Sasha says that sometimes I interrupt her, and I say, well, it's because you talk a lot. I got to jump in. But this way, we're forced to kind of do like walkie-talkie in a sense, one talk, then mic. It's like the old walkie-talkies if you did that. And I want to go over a couple of rants and super chats and everything else about that. And let me get caught up on that, and then we'll get back in the discussion. And Rowhouse, I'm glad you made it, Rowhouse. I know this is a late stream for a lot of you guys, but hence the title of the show, Night Owls. We do this. Sasha has a real job, and she works evenings, so she gets off late. So we decided to move this back to Friday night. We used to do it Sundays, but I don't know. I just enjoy it better Friday nights, and so we kind of back to doing this. And it's one of these shows I got to get into because, boy, I drag right before the show because my day starts at 6 a.m. And so it makes for a long day, but I enjoy streaming and I get my second win when I'm on the stream. And thank you, Rojas, for staying up late. My one political thing of the night, Rams, is Sweden doing what America seems unwilling to do. And that is the Sweden sees drop in immigration as more people leave. I haven't heard about that, but if that is happening, if Sweden is be more successful of helping with immigration, good for them. I think countries are going to learn that diversity is not a strength and immigration is not a strength necessarily. And you can arrest people about it, but when you have to arrest people like they do in Britain to try to enforce it, it's obviously not a blessing. It's not something that people want. Your thoughts, Sasha, on that?
I don't know about the Sweden thing. I hadn't heard of it. But you do remember during the COVID stuff, they didn't lock down and go nuts like a lot of places did. So maybe there is hope for Sweden because, I mean, think of all the other countries that they all just followed along, but Sweden was kind of different and they didn't have all the problems that we do.
And that's something that RFK Jr., there's some issues with RFK Jr., but he was really good on COVID. And I won't go too deep into COVID because YouTube's still picky on that. But he was a lot better than Tim Walz. Tim Walz actually threw some grandmother in jail because she wouldn't close her business. So let's never forget these tyrants that happened during that time. even though they would like us to forget what they were like. I will never forget that period of time. How many people were cowardly? How many people blindly followed orders? How many people looked at themselves as little commissars willing to boss people around? I'll never forget those assholes.
Yeah, they want us to pretend like it didn't happen now too. It's kind of funny, like, oh, just forget about all this. We didn't lose our minds. And I had like a friend of mine that kind of dropped me during this time because she was scared. And she was like, well, it was a big deal at first. I was like, no, you're, part of the problem. I mean, I'm still friends with her, but it's like, we didn't really let it stop us, but a lot of people did, and people were going around acting like dictators, telling you to put masks on, and so it's like, yeah, I haven't forgotten. We shouldn't forget, and that's kind of the reason too. It makes me nervous thinking about like the left being in charge because like even though Trump did push the vaccine and everything, he wasn't going to mandate people have to take it, and I don't trust all the left wing governments are really bad about trying to tell people what they can do with their bodies. Unless it's killing a kid, then they're on board.
Yeah, and I'm never. There was the funniest incident, and by the way, I was really lucky to be with Sasha at the time because we were. Sometimes it just felt just her and me were alone in this, and but we held firm. And I always remember Arkansas didn't officially close down. There was restrictions, but the restaurants were still open. You had to be outside or something. And Sasha and I went to a Mexican restaurant. They had outdoor seating, and I was enjoying a margarita while everyone else was in a panic. And I tweeted it, and that triggered Richard Spencer, and he forwarded it to the Oklahoma State Police, the Oklahoma Police. Oklahoma City Police because he thought I was in Oklahoma City for some reason. And I thought that was so funny. And he thought he was going to get me arrested for breaking lockdowns or something.
Yeah, it's too bad what happened to him, really. I used to like to watch him. I thought he was kind of funny and he had good taste in music. And then before you know it, like now he's like a Kamala Harris supporter and he was going to call the cops on you. And you said he wasn't very nice to the wait staff and everything. And it's like, it's disappointing because I heard you guys on the roundtable tonight. Somebody mentioned that documentary, The Alt Right Age of Rage. And it was pretty good. It came out like 2017, 2018, but it followed around like Richard Spencer and Jared Taylor's in it too. And I think it was kind of almost fair. It wasn't just a total hit piece. They actually did let him say things, but um, yeah, I don't know. The thing with Spencer, it's too bad.
Yeah, I've always suspected because Spencer really he went through a whole progression. It's hard to tell with him how much was genuine, but he wanted to originally be kind of like a libertarian. Then he wanted to be like a mainstream Republican. Then he started this something called the alternative right, although he didn't really coin the term. He had a blog spot named that. And he kind of got into that sort of thing, but it was what I call the original alternative right without all the kookiness that it later became. But then he embraced all the kookiness, including the Daily Stormer and all that stuff when they were hardcore, swastikas and all that. And he had his advisor, Solus Invictus or something, the sun god, and that actually sacrificed goat and drank the blood. And he would give decrees and claim he's a Roman Empire. And this is what I talk about the weirdo factor in our sphere. We're always plagued by, why can't people just have good positions without becoming a fucking weirdo? And that happened with Spencer. It happened with Nick Fuentes when it came to Kanye. Remember the Gimp mask and all that stuff. And it's Lucas Gage now. It's happened to. So a lot of these people, they just go down a real weird route. And then so by that time when he was his radical stuff, they were always calling me a cuck and everything and punching right, not extreme enough. And then after he lost all those lawsuits, he became a shitlib, which leads me to believe they cut a deal that they wouldn't take his trust fund is if he became a shitlib, anti-racist, that type of person because then he was like the biggest in name and ooh the evil racist white supremacist and look at we got his scalp now he's kneeling to us and he's a anti-racist. So I always thought part of his change was because of a legal settlement. I can't prove that. This is my guess.
Well, it almost seems that like it would have to be because I mean he was like pretty hardcore, and then you just go from one position to the other. And it wasn't like he was a young person discovering their politics, because people do when you're younger. Most people are more left, and then they kind of progress. Or you're a libertarian. I remember I took a quiz when I was like 22 when I worked at the university. They had people giving quizzes out and trying to do the get the vote thing. And it's like, what party are you? And I took it. I remember I got libertarian. And but it's like, how do you go from being like a race realist guy to all of a sudden I'm going to vote for Kamala? It's like, come on, like something's wrong. Like, and he changed so quick. And sometimes on his X, because I follow him on X, sometimes on X he will even say something that almost sounds like the old Spencer, but then he'll have to throw something in like, oh, I'm going to vote for Kamala anyway, even though Trump has some good policies or whatever. I can't think of anything specific, but just stuff like that where you almost think like, oh, something's up with him. But do you remember when he was on JF's show and they sang Depeche Mode, Enjoy the Silence? That would be something funny if somebody could dig that up.
Yeah, that was great. And then talk about weird things. Then we have the whole JF saga with his wife just disappeared into the nether world, never to be seen again. And we don't know what happened with that, but it's really weird. And yeah, getting back to the legal aspect, Tucker Carlson, without mentioning him, although Nick Fuentes said Tucker meant him, was implying that Nick Fuentes may now be a federal informant because in January 6th, Nick was encouraging people to go into the Capitol. And even though Nick didn't, if you're encouraging people to go in there, that's us, take it, that's called incitement, especially because Nick, he was like the number one bad guy, January 6th leader. It's very strange that they didn't go after him harder with a huge prison sentence. And so a lot of people, including Tucker, are thinking he's compromised. I don't know. The problem is you never know usually because they keep this quiet. There was a famous, I think his name was Hal Turner in the 90s. He was like a neo-Nazi type. And he had, before they had, the internet as much, they had like radio, he had a radio show, shortwave or whatever. And it turned out that he was a confidential informant. He came out in court because that was his defense, because he was advocating like to kill judges or something. He goes, well, that's what the FBI wanted me to say, stuff like that, to get, as a honeypot. So they do exist. And so I understand the danger, though, of, calling everyone a Fed is not healthy necessarily because not everyone is. Some people are just stupid. So, I've always had the opinion we don't really have to decide if someone's just acting stupid or if they're the Fed. Either way, we shouldn't, be around people that are acting in such a manner.
Do you remember that guy Paul Little, or was it Paul or Patrick Little? Do you remember that guy?
Yeah, I think Paul Little was the guy that did impressions in the 70s. He was funny. But yeah, Patrick Little, he was another guy, kind of like Lucas Gage, that took that certain pill about that certain group, and he just went down a really weird spiral, which I said on my roundtable tonight. Groups like the ADL really love that because it gives the character, it makes you look unhinged, and that your critiques of their power is not true because obviously you're a nutty person. And I think they love that type of behavior out of people.
What was that other guy? Was it Paul Nealon? Wasn't he running for like senator or something of Wisconsin? I remember he was on like all the shows back around like when Trump was running, and he was kind of based. And I even want to say Ann Coulter endorsed one of his books or something, and then all this shit came out, and all these people are like, "Oh, he's racist and anti-Semitic." I think at least that's the way I'm remembering it. Do you remember that?
Yeah, vaguely. Like I said, it's not my first rodeo. This tends to go into a certain pattern. Someone rises up, they're kind of moderate, then they get more based, and then they learn about that one issue, and then they start spiraling, and then they become just about that one issue, and then everything that goes bad is because of that one group of people. and then they end up kind of unhinged, and then a disaster follows. And I've just seen this repeated over and over and over. It's just getting tiring at this point.
Yeah, it is kind of weird. A lot of those people kind of went nuts, or even like what happened, like you said, with JF and Mama JF. Like, where'd she go? And I don't know. There's a lot of characters from back then, and a lot of shit's happened.
Yeah, a lot of people I think were just grifters, meaning they didn't really believe in what they were saying. Like Baked Alaska, he started out as a liberal with BuzzFeed, but then he found a niche in the alt right. I don't think he was ever believed it really. He's not the brightest guy. Then he had his girlfriend Ashton Birdie or something like that, and then I guess now she's like a communist and like a e OnlyFans, but like a person type. So a lot of these people, they go down that route. They're not really, they don't really, they just see this as a grift way to make money. And then when things go bad, they go into something else. Again, I've seen that story so many times. That's why, especially if they're like a young woman, that well, any young people, but especially if they're a female, I don't put much credence in what they say, even if they have nice tits, because a lot of it I think is just for attention, and they can rapidly change their views when things get hot, and what go from being a on the right saying base things to being a shit lib, but like really really quick.
Yeah, Baked Alaska was so funny back in the day. When he first came out, I thought he was kind of likable, and then he did all this shit, and he changed his position like half a dozen times. Remember, he was a Yang guy for a while, and he had the Yang Gang song. That was funny too. That was one of his funnier songs, probably unintentionally, but. And then when he got maced, remember that, or pepper sprayed? I guess it was. Was that at Charlottesville, or I can't remember, but then after a while you're just like, yeah, he doesn't really believe anything. I think the best things he did were when he went into Chicago and he passed all the chicken out. Like, that was so funny. That, and the whole arc with oh god, what was her name?
Yeah, I did. I did enjoy. I'll just wait till Sasha mute it here just a
I can
second.
hear you.
All right, you want to mute it? All right. So yeah, I thought yeah, I mean, he's funny, and I thought he did a lot of good stuff. But he was part of that. There's a lot of people that they want to be famous to be famous. That's what they want, and they don't really care so much about the ideas or anything. And don't get me wrong, there's an entertainment factor to this all, and I get it. But there's a lot of people like him, he didn't really do any. It's so funny because Kino Casino did a thing when he went to prison. He said that was the first time he ever read a book or something. I'm like, really? The first time you've ever read a book is when you were in prison. So, this isn't like a deep thinker. And but he was entertaining. But the problem is a lot of people, they fell into these people, and they didn't really have much of a ideology. And then they, would drift into like then the Fuentes Christ is King, where they're supposed to be Catholic. While they're saying that, they're talking about how they want to have, have some butt sex with some girl they just met or something. So it was really odd. It was all just kind of a LARP. There didn't, for the most part, seem much substance to it with many of these people.
Yeah, I was gonna say something about that, and then I forgot. Yeah, no, the book thing. That's what I was gonna say. How did he get through college if he had never read a book? Did they not make him read one book in college?
Well, a lot of college is a joke now, and you could probably get through easy degrees anyway without reading. There was a famous football player. Of course, he was a football player, so he didn't really have to go to class. This was in the 70s. I forget his name, but he got his degree. That was back when you had to go all 4 years before you could play in the NFL. So he got an official college degree, and he had a pretty successful NFL career. Then after his career ended, one of his things he did was literacy, because he said that after he was illiterate. He could not read, and he had a college diploma.
What the hell? Like, how the hell do you make it? How do you make it through college and not know how to read? They must have been letting him cheat all the way through college just to let him play football. Which I don't honestly, I don't even really understand why you need to go to college to play football. It seems like if you're good at football, you should just train and practice doing football. I don't know anything about football. That just seems like how it is to me. Do they really give a shit? Like if he takes math classes? But I don't see how you could get through college, though. It seems like somebody would call you out. Like, did he not know how to write? I guess if he can't read, he can't write.
Well, yeah, when I went to college, even I went to Colorado State University, and it wasn't a big football program, but there's a couple things. The football players, they are not really students; they're officially students because, and I'll get into why they do that, but they will major in PE or something, so they don't have a really tough class. And in the colleges where you still have to take some, all freshmen have to take a class, they blatantly do cheat. They will have people take tests for the athlete, and is pretty well known. That's what happens. And the reason, you brought up a good question. Why do they even go to college? Why don't they just go directly to the pros? Well, back in the day, even now, you can't go directly to the pros. You have to, I think it's been 1 or 2 seasons in college, and it's a little bit because the NFL works with the colleges. They don't want to take their business away. And the colleges, there's a lot of people, they still have this myth that they want to believe in their minds because originally football really started with colleges, and it was like legitimate people, students would challenge like a nearby college, a rival. That's how you had a rivalry to play a football game. And they had a leagues, but they were like students. So they were real students that would play football. And then as it got more and more money involved with it, they realized, hey, we could get this guy, Jamal, he can't read, but he can run really fast, and this will help our football team. And then they went down that road. So now it's all kind of a game. Most of the football players that in college football are not really students. Officially they are, but not really. They don't go to class or anything like that. Officially they do, but they really don't. And it's sort of a game that they play because it makes boomers feel happy that their college football team is going good. And Sasha, you should know a little bit about that. Here in Arkansas, we have University of Arkansas, and there's a lot of people that are alumni that are extremely loyal, and they give a lot of money to the program.
Yeah, I don't know why anyone would give money to the University of Arkansas. Like the way that they have their little diversity agenda and everything else. I wouldn't donate to them. Give your money to an animal shelter if you're going to do that.
Just let me we have a couple more chats I want to go through. So thank you very much for this. It's really great. And we had one from Jack Da Cripper. Rams, please watch Devin Stack's Insomnia stream. His latest vid is called Big Brain Edition. He knows a lot about various groups of people and the history that got us here. Blackpilled here on Rumble. I haven't watched much Blackpill, but I heard he is basically he is as his name is Blackpilled, and so I'm not going to criticize him or something. Sometimes things are Blackpilled, but sometimes that can lead you to a bad place too. What's your opinion of Blackpill? I haven't really watched him much.
I used to listen to him a lot. I liked when he would do deep dives about propaganda and shows. But after a while, it became like everything's propaganda. You can't enjoy anything. And I don't know, it got, well, he's blackpilled. Like, I can't do the dark shit all the time. Because I think it takes you down kind of a dark road when you realize like how screwed up things are. And I don't know. I just don't want to spend my life being like angry and upset.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we got another rant from Rowhouse, and it's about he likes to send these TV show guesses. And we talked about this before the show, Rowhouse, not me and you, but it was Sasha and I, that how we're going to do this because we wanted to, get back on YouTube some of these night owls. We've been doing some on just Rumble and X only. So what we'll probably do is we might just shut down the YouTube part earlier and then go a little bit longer on Rumble and X so we can do your link here. So thank you for that. And we will get to it, but we just can't, for copyright reasons, show it on YouTube. So.
Oh, you didn't read the one about the NES games yet?
Yeah, I saw that. I was getting to that. Got to my rants, and now we'll go to the NES. And this is Mr. X Pound Cakes. Sasha, what are your favorite NES games? Do you and Rams play Super Mario Bros? What's the toughest one you beaten? Do you sell many on eBay?
You go first.
It was addressed to you, and I don't. I guess NES is that Nintendo?
Yes, it does say you and Rams.
Do you and Rams ever play Super Mario Brothers? Yeah, years ago I played it, and I had a the Nintendo game with Duck Hunt, and I beat it, and I used to play that quite a bit. I don't really play a lot of video games now. Sometimes I will play a little bit of Star Wars, The Old Republic, but usually when I'm not busy streaming or doing videos or doing prep for videos, I'm now working on a game, so it takes some of my time. And recently, because of that tornado damage, I've been using the chainsaw. So I don't really play a lot of Super Mario Brothers recently.
I love this question. Thanks. This is a good question. The first game I ever played was Super Mario Brothers on the NES, and I loved it. And my friend had it, and that was the first time I'd ever played a video game. And then I begged and begged and begged for a Nintendo, and I got one, I think for Christmas. And my favorite games were probably Dr. Mario, Super Mario Brothers 3. I like the Castlevania games. God, there's so many good ones. Tetris. Yeah, NES is probably my favorite console. The toughest one I've beaten is probably Back to the Future. At least I know a lot of people say they think it's hard, and I've got through the whole week in Paperboy, and I've also passed level 20 on Dr. Mario. I'm actually pretty good at video games, like old video games anyway.
Yeah, did you see that? Let me show you this tweet, Sasha. It had to do with video games and your opinion on this. This Liz Wheeler. This is 100% true. Men playing video games is peak unattractive, beyond red flag, like deal breaker zone. It's weird that so many dudes don't get this. And least attractive hobbies, according to men. And there was a community note said this was fake, but she agrees with it. Playing video games, collecting figurines, magic tricks, online trolling, gambling, building model trains, taxidermy. I like to comic book collecting, and a bird watch. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Look, I don't have any problem with playing video games. The only thing is sometimes people do get addicted. And I've gone out with people like this where that's all they do 24/7. And it's like, that's like an addiction. Well, I worked with this guy that played World of Warcraft. And like, he was like, I guess it's a guild master, because I've never played World of Warcraft, but he was a guild master, and they wanted to go do something that night, like him and his girlfriend, like go to a concert or something. They had to tell the people that he was presiding over on World of Warcraft that his house burned down that night, or there was a house fire, because he couldn't get out of like having to do this, because these people were so addicted to World of Warcraft. It was like going to work every night or something, like you couldn't miss. Now that can be a problem, I think. You get too addicted, just like with anything else. But I mean, if you just play, even a couple hours every day, I don't see what the big deal is. I like to play video games too, and sometimes I'd get addicted to games. When Kingdom Hearts 2 came out, I sat in front of the TV for like a week on my Christmas break trying to beat that game. So I don't have a problem. Most of the things on that list are things I like anyway. Like, do you still have the list?
Yeah, let me bring this back up.
I don't see why there's a problem with a lot of the stuff on the list, really. But yeah, I wouldn't let somebody tell me I couldn't have my hobbies. Yeah, collecting figurines, I do that. Magic tricks are fun. Online trolling, I mean, like, why do you care if somebody trolls online? Gambling, I mean, that's on the thing where it could be addictive and if it's a problem, but if you just do it once in a while, I don't see the big deal is building model trains. I think that's a good hobby to have. I don't build trains, but I build other things like little houses and things like that. Taxidermy, no, I would not want to do that. Comic books, I even have some old comic books and bird watching. I mean, that's fun. So I don't really get what should men do with their time, to spend it all with the women.
Well, that's the point I brought up is it is interesting how if a man put out a listing, I don't, here's the things women do that are deal breakers. They better not do this around me. Such a man would get flamed and be called as controlling and abusive and be called an incel. You know that would happen. And it's interesting how women just think they have a right to try to control men's behavior, but the other way around, women see that as just being controlling and abusive and get away from him, sister. You know, it is just sort of how there's that double standard.
I don't know. Sometimes I think some of these people have too much free time on their hands. Like, I just don't even. It's funny because sometimes people accuse me of like changing you and stuff, and I'm like, I don't really pay attention to what you do like all that much. Like, you do your thing and I do mine, and we like hang out together too, but it's not like, oh, Paul's playing a game for too long and he's not paying attention to me. I'm going to like throw a fit about it. I don't fucking care because I've got my own stuff to do. So I don't know. Some of these people, I just think they should get hobbies and find something that they enjoy, and not just expect to have somebody entertain them all the time, because that's what it's about, because you're not paying attention to them really.
Yeah, and it's insulting to not only you but to me too. That the idea that someone can tell me what to do and what I came up with specifically, because and another thing that's been an old circle ever since I've done videos is people like what I do. They think I'm based, but then because I don't go so far in one direction about certain subjects, then the narrative becomes, oh, I've cocked. I used to be a lot more right winger and radical. Now I'm just a mainstream Republican, which is laughable if you ever watch my videos. I don't think the GOP would really want me up representing them. It's hilarious. But that's and then but now the twist of it, because I'm with you, is somehow you've secretly poisoned my mind and made me a normie Republican, which is just really crazy. And in some ways, off the air, we can't, talk as freely when we're on YouTube, even on Rumble. But we say things that are probably not even safe for Rumble.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't really care. I mean, what you think, and I don't think it's you. I think the Republicans have gone more to the right, because I've even heard some politicians now say anti-white, and you wouldn't even hear that. Like, I don't know, in 2016 they stayed away from that, and even like mainstream people are talking about it now because it's going to affect them too because they're white. So you know what I mean? Like, more people are saying that. It's like, you didn't become a normie Republican. You don't want wars. I mean, when I think of like normie Republican types, I guess I still kind of think of the old school Republicans, but the whole immigration, let's let everybody in as long as it's legal. No, we don't want any more. Like, I think we're full. When does the spout turn off?
Yeah, I agree 100% on that. And uh yeah, and it's we don't I wouldn't think of trying to change Sasha's point of view, and Sasha wouldn't have much luck changing my point of view. Although we discuss a lot. I mean, we agree on most things, really. And if you guys saw us in real life, which I think we work well because I always like to discuss politics, but Sasha discusses it quite a bit too with me, even though we're not on air. We'll just have a long discussion about stuff in the car or whatever. I mean, there's other things we talk about too, but it's just kind of natural for us. We do this sort of thing and we talk about a lot of issues. I mean, we were just talking about it. I'll give you an example. We talked about, you guys saw I got my haircut today, and I have this little Mexican girl that does my hair, and it's at this hair salon. The guy that owns it's a white guy, but he's gay. He's older. He's like my age. and you always think Fayetteville's conservative, but it's not. It's a liberal city, and he's kind of a Fayetteville gay guy. And they were talking. She was just talking. She talks a lot, and then she was on this flight, and she went through the metal detector. And then they patted her down. She goes, "Oh, I always hate when they do that." And then he said, "Oh, well, they probably just did that to you because you're brown." And then she didn't mean it racial or anything like that. And she goes, "Oh, really? I never thought of that." And then I just jumped in and said, "Well, I've been patted down many times, and I'm about as white as you can get." So that's an anecdote I was just talking to Sasha about, and we got kind of discussing about that because Sasha's big on in real life. We need to do what I did is push back, and I wasn't aggressive, but I said that. And the white gay guy didn't know what to say, so he shut up. But it's interesting, it wasn't the Mexican that was trying to make it all racial, the reason she was pat down, because she's a Mexican. And by the way, she's a really fair Mexican, very light skinned. She could pass as white probably. But he did. He immediately, the typical shit lib white person, tries to virtue signal. And I didn't play the virtue signaling game. He just didn't know how to deal with that.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny he would try to stir up that shit. It's like, yeah, somebody girl's not even thinking about that, and then his mind immediately goes to that. It's kind of funny because I've been patted down. The last time I flew somewhere, well, before I met you, they pulled me aside at X and A here. Like, I don't, they just do that. And I'm not brown, so it's kind of bullshit. A lot of people working there aren't white anyway at the TSA.
Yeah, and it really shows how a lot of this anti-whiteness really comes from a certain group of white people. And I don't think he's part of that group. What I mean, I don't think he's at all. But a lot of these people, especially if they haven't been exposed to it, they really have this fictional reality of the world that is little innocent black kids trying to go to school, and there's the evil Ku Klux Klan trying to stop them all the time, and it's this evil white supremacists just trying to target people at, let's say, airports and shake them down, but they never do white people. And it's the statistics don't show that. Cops are more likely proportionally to shoot whites than blacks, but it's this myth that even though it doesn't correspond to reality, they have it in their head and they see everything through this racial lens. And this guy was trying to virtue signal to this young Mexican girl who wasn't even interested in it about, "Oh, I bet you were patted down because you were brown."
Yeah, and all that does is like try to get people thinking that shit. It's almost like they have to be told that. Because it's like, why would your parents come here anyway? And then this guy just tells you that, and then you're gonna believe like, oh, it's because I was brown that I was patted down, when everybody knows the TSA fucks with everybody. And I've seen I don't know how many videos on X of like black women getting pulled over for doing stupid shit, and the cops are so patient and nice to them because they know they're being recorded and they don't want to have problems from these people. So it's like they're going to mess with whites more than they do like anybody else because they don't want to be called racist.
Yeah, I mean, I was pulled over here in Fayetteville. Sasha was with me, and I didn't really do anything wrong. The guy, he just thought I was suspicious, but so that definitely happens. Oh, we got a super chat. I want to get a rant. My related to my rant about Sweden. Does Europe seem in better demographic shape than the U.S.? We had two bad parties on migration. Europe has parties they can vote to limit migration. I I'm not as we're in a Europe's in a better state situation just because we had a bad head start on Europe on the bad slope, but they're really trying to make up the difference. And I well, it depends what you mean by Europe. Eastern Europe is still really white, and Hungary's still protecting their nation. They don't allow immigrants in at all, hardly, and so good for Hungary. But then you look at Britain seems to be committing suicide, or people are trying to murder the British homeland. Same with France. So I wouldn't say that Europe is in a better position. In fact, in many ways, if you try to advocate for immigration restrictions, at least in Britain, you can get arrested. So I'm not willing. I'm sure maybe there is something a little bit better with Sweden and good if they're catching on. But I'm still not. I want to put Europe above America in that. And a lot of Europeans say, hey, you guys are in a better situation because you have the First Amendment. So I still think that's true. Your thoughts, Sasha?
I think it's sad what's happened to Britain and Europe as a whole. I mean, I guess some places are okay, like Hungary, and I've heard Poland's not too bad, but it seems like Western Europe's like trying to commit suicide. And I don't know how they're going to get all those people out of there because those people are really violent. And then, well, like the British government, they want to arrest like native British people. And I mean, it's just crazy. I used to want to go there. I don't even have a desire to go there anymore. I would like to go to Scotland, but like you said, if they're going to be able to arrest people for tweets and things like that, like that's not good.
Yeah, I mean that's a real issue now that they said that even Americans, if you tweet stuff they don't like and you happen to be in Britain, and not even if you tweeted in Britain, but let's say you live in America and you're free and you say your opinion, you're against immigration, we have our right to our own homelands. In Britain, a guy was thrown into jail for saying it's okay to be white. So, yeah, I have a lot of tweets I'm sure they throw me in jail for. So I think it's almost like North Korea now. It's a very big risk to go there. And that's really sad too, because that's my homeland. We got another super chat. Thank you. Subprime Caesar. Rams, great to catch you live for once. Well, thank you. Yeah, this is our real late show. What would you guys consider required reading or just great books you have read? I'm a huge fan of fantasy and been reading the Turner Diaries lately. I read that book. That is a interesting book. Uh, if you're into that type of line, you might want to consider the books by Harold Covington were kind of interesting too in that sphere. You definitely they. It's funny because they always talk about Republic is one of bad books. Well, I don't think they'd put the Turner Diaries in the school. So it's uh, good books. It's funny. Sasha is a big reader. I'm a big reader. We read lots of stuff. I just got through a book about Africa, going into Africa, Dr. Livingstone. That was fascinating. And I'm now on reading a book, Guns of Steel or something like that, about what's the title? It's about World War One from a German perspective. So I've been reading that too. So I tend to read more historical type of books. Sasha, what have you been reading or recommend?
I just read this book, and it's not even that long either. I think it's called "Whites Were Slaves Too," and it's kind of funny. It was written by a Jewish guy, and it's all about how a lot of white people were treated and how they were slaves, but that they don't teach this stuff in history, and how some of these kids were used as chimney sweeps, and a lot of them died. It was really sad, and they actually said that whites were probably treated worse. Um, that I read that. It was kind of depressing, but now let's see. Oh, and I listened to an audiobook about Greta Garbo. That wasn't that great. Good books I've read in the past. Watership Down's a good book. It's old. All Creatures Great and Small is a good book. So I don't know. I like animal books. Animal fantasy books are good too. Like Traveler, that's another Richard Adams book. It's about the horse. It was Robert E. Lee's horse, and it's like through his eyes during the war, but stuff like that. The Game of Thrones books, Harry Potter. I know everybody's mostly read those, but they're fun.
I like for fiction, Slaughterhouse Five is an anti-war book. Kurt Vonnegut Jr. He actually fought in World War II. Excellent book. Different style, but I really liked it. I don't want to say this to sound pretentious, so I'll put a book that I try to read, but I hated. But I did love War and Peace. I like Russian novels, and that was a good book. So I'd recommend that. I go back to that a lot. Now, a book I hated that, you're supposed to like the greatest novel ever, Ulysses by James Joyce. I hate James Joyce. I'd probably piss on his grave if I could find him. I hated that guy. I hated how he wrote. He was pretentious. And then he wrote Finnegan's Wake, which was just literally nonsense. He was like a con man, in my opinion. So I hated James Joyce, and at least what I read of him. But I did like Tolstoy quite a bit, and Yeah, I'm always reading books. I read a book about Shiloh last year, and I'm into Civil War history and stuff too. So that's kind of interesting. So yeah, thanks for that. I do appreciate that. And Sasha, I'll show you this. This was kind of funny. I was going to show it on my show, but I'll show it here. And let me just bring this up here. This is the D&D consent companion, navigating boundaries and role playing. And I joked it's important for orcs to ask for consent before they rape and pillage a village. So D&D is these guys, Wizards of Coast. It's now the good thing is you play D&D, you can play it however you want to play it. You don't have to have this nonsense. But what does it even mean consent? Because it's not real. It's a storytelling. And if you're like the evil wizard, you have to say, "Oh, before I cast this bad spell on you, do you consent me doing this?" It's bizarre.
Yeah, it seems like a bunch of like hags got in the D&D community and they like fucked it up and ruined it. Like they do everything else, like video games, and they get in and they complain. And it's like, oh, we need more representation of women or minority groups or whatever in these games. And then before you know it, you have like a companion to tell you not to like rape someone's character or something. Like the whole thing is just crazy. It's just nuts. It's kind of like I'm sure a lot of people that are listening have seen the movie Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Well, in that movie, one of the kids in that liked to play D&D, and when he was in the dream world, he could walk because the kid was in a wheelchair. He didn't want to be in a wheelchair in the game. It was kind of an escape, and they've kind of ruined the escape now. It seems like, and it's I don't know. They just ruin these things.
Yeah, the thing that was most amazing, that goes back, that they had a dungeons that were handicap accessible. So if you had a wizard, for example, in your party that was in a wheelchair, you would say, if you make the evil wizard in his tower, you would make sure that it just wasn't stairs that went up to the top of the tower where the evil wizard lived with his orb and his flying monkeys. No, 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 no. The evil wizard would provide a ramp so the character in the wheelchair could get up to the top of the tower. It is so fucking stupid. It doesn't, because it's all in your mind. It's just like crazy. It'd be like if you do the movie Braveheart. They may do this. I don't want to give them ideas, but you say, Braveheart. What if he would have been handicapped? So let's put him in a wheelchair, and then let's just have like the English make sure they could guide him in okay with his wheelchair. It's just so crazy. But this is where we are. And then that brings up another subject. I wanted to talk about the DNC. This is a sensitive subject, so we'll try to deal with this as sensitive as we can and not say certain words on YouTube, but especially the R word. But I guess Tim Walz has the R word kid, and he is my dad. And then it was interesting because I told the story, and this is true. I have a doctor. She's a medical doctor in her 20s, real doctor, not like Dr. Jill. And she watches my videos for a long time. I met her years ago. I won't say where she lives, or I don't want to dox her at all. I'll just call her Mary. That's not her name. But she tweeted me or sent me a message on X that people are infertile for a reason. And mind you, she's a medical doctor. Imagine paying for IVF, and this is what you get. There was a reason your attempts to have kids didn't work, genetic issues. So what do you think about all that, Sasha?
Oh, before I forget, somebody in the chat said the guy that wrote the book wasn't Jewish. I'm sorry. I thought he was. His name sounded Jewish. But anyway, um, I agree with your doctor friend. I didn't think they had IVF. They had something kind of like IVF because that was the whole thing. They were trying to say like JD Vance was against IVF, which he's not. But um, I don't know why you would spend all that money and then, that stuff's expensive to do that. And then you keep trying over and over again. And then you finally have a kid and he turns out like that kid. Maybe you shouldn't wait till you're like 50 or however. I mean, he's your age and he has a 17-year-old. So they must have got started kind of late.
Yeah, and it's especially important with women because their eggs deteriorate in quality, especially after the age of 35, and you're more likely to have a kid with a mental disability. That's just biology. It's amazing how many women don't understand biology. And it actually increases with men too, not as dramatically because a man can be 80 years old. I think Al Pacino got sued for
Yeah.
child support because he knocked up someone when he was 80. But you're still, it's your sperm quality is not as good, and you're more likely to have problems with your children.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. They have money, I guess, to take care of him, so that's good. But yeah, it seems like why don't you just adopt a kid if you're having all that trouble getting pregnant? At some point, why not just go adopt some poor kid that needs a home? So I don't get that, but yeah.
I guess Ann Coulter got in trouble because she tweeted, "Talk about weird," and then they're all aghast. They have different. Here's my thing on this: is on one hand, and my doctor friend, she talked a little bit more about this. They want to act like that no one is again, I won't use the R word, but it doesn't is low IQ. They don't want to believe that exists. And people that are can't hardly speak, they're secretly intelligent in other ways when actually the real answer is no, they're not. They're just really super low IQ and they have troubles doing basic things and they will always live like that. It's a sad situation and I don't want to make fun of someone like that. But if you're going to do this idea, oh, they need to be treated like everyone else, and they should be, inclusive. Okay, then they should be fair game, right? If, but it's just like this weird standard. And I always thought, hell, most of the Democrats would have aborted this kid. That's what they stand for. So there's some sort of tension there about it's taboo to say anything about this. But I don't know. I mean, I retweeted Milo, which I'm not going to show here because I don't know if it's safe for YouTube. But he can be like the gay bitchy guy that's kind of funny, and I think you saw that tweet, didn't you, Sasha?
Yeah, I did. He retweeted you too. I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, I agree with what you said about it. And it is strange because these people would probably tell you to abort your kid if it was like that. But they not only didn't do that, they paid a bunch of money so they could like have the kid because they couldn't have kids, I guess, or they had trouble having kids.
And as my doctor friend said, maybe that's nature's way of telling you you shouldn't have kids. And I think nature tends to be right in a lot of these things. And I'm not necessarily against IVF if someone wants to do it. But sometimes there's some issues there, especially when the woman is very old or something. There's a lot more risk there. And I think we're biological creatures and we go through a rhythm of life and it's natural. And I don't know, we get a lot of people mad at me maybe saying this. Well, maybe not this audience, but it's natural for young people to have babies, young girls. What I don't mean like, 14, but I mean women. And my mother had me when she was 20 years old, and that wasn't considered weird or creepy or anything. And that is probably the prime healthy age to have a child. And this idea that you can wait till you're in your 40s is really strange. And it's like denying reality of women, their biology. And I'm not saying this, again, if you want to have a kid when you're in 40s, I'm not trying to judge you, but you have to understand you're probably going to have troubles getting pregnant, and there's more chance you'll end up a kid like Tim Walz.
Yeah, you're right. People seem to be doing that more and more now, though. They put off having kids till they're really old. I remember seeing, I think Jennifer Jason Leigh had a kid when she was like 50. And I was like, holy shit, like most people are already going through like menopause then. And most of these people are not having these kids by nature. They're doing like IVF and other things. And maybe that's why a lot of these kids are autistic now because people are having them later and later in life. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just the chemicals in everything. I don't know, but it does seem like there's a lot more people that are kind of like, I guess, on the spectrum.
Yeah, let me show you something too. This kind of pivot into the Me Too movement. I tweeted this and get your I haven't even talked to Sasha about this, so I get her perspective. But this lady was saying, I can't give you a better explanation of how Me Too came into existence than this video right here. Women's their nature to be highly agreeable, paired with a culture that encourages promiscuity. That's one dangerous combination. So let's take a look
This
here.
or listening are like, why the fuck didn't I just go home? And I still to this day can't fully articulate why I didn't leave, which sadly I think is so fucking relatable for women. Like, why didn't you leave? Like, you were uncomfortable. Like, what did you think was going to change? Like, why did you stay? Like, I think as backwards as it sounds, because of how uncomfortable and awkward it was with this person, I didn't know what to do other than stay and suck it up. Like, I didn't want to make the
No pun intended.
other person feel more uncomfortable. So I tried to like appease the situation and make it better because staying and being miserable somehow felt easier than like pissing someone off and getting in this fight and like leaving and acknowledging how awkward it was. And since he wasn't saying anything, I was not going to say anything. And like, I don't know, maybe only women will understand that, but like it is confusing and yet like it's not confusing at all. Like I feel like we've all been there where we're like, I didn't really want to do that, or I wasn't really into it, but then like I didn't know how to get myself out of the situation, and I'm like in an apartment with these two men and like he had already been being snappy. It was just it was awful. It was a bad situation.
So I think what she's saying here, Sasha, she ended up fucking some guy that she regretted fucking, but she didn't know how to leave the situation. So it's become sort of like a Me Too thing. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, she could have left, like, just, hey, see you later. So I don't see how it's a me too if you consented to it, but then because you didn't really want to, but you didn't have the guts to just say no or walk out, then it's somehow the guy's fault.
Yeah, and she's saying, well, this is something when you're a woman, so you should be able to relate. But oh, I wanted to be agreeable, and it's just an awkward situation. So, by the way, I could tell just by looking at her that I wouldn't like her. She's kind of a loudmouth, and to me, I just find her off-putting right off the bat. Maybe some guys would find her attractive. I don't. I just get bitch vibes from her. I don't. Let me just show you guys her again. And I don't even know her. Maybe she's a real nice lady, but I've been around enough that I can usually size up someone so pretty quick and how they talk and how they act. And I just look at her as like a high maintenance bitch that I would not want to put any time or resources into. I don't find her attractive at all. But she was saying that women basically don't have agency, and all women can relate to this.
Yeah, but you do have agency. You can leave. Yeah, I doubt that I would like her either. She does seem kind of bitchy. Um, I don't understand these people, like these women. You say that you're strong and empowered and all this stuff, and then like you can't even just tell somebody I don't want to sleep with you and then leave. And then, like I said, and then somehow it's the guy's fault.
Yeah, and yeah, that's what's really weird about the situation. And her arguments, well, you have to be a woman to understand this. I just felt awkward about the situation, but I felt too awkward to say no. But I mean, you have to, like you said, if you're going to be strong and empowered and put yourself in these situation, how hard is it just to say, hey, I like you. It's just going a little too fast now. Why don't we just take a break from this? I think there's a way you can get out of it. That's not, because it doesn't sound like he forced himself on her or anything like that. And if she would have just said, "Hey, I just don't really feel it right now. It's nothing against you. I mean, let's just go a little bit slower now." I think that probably would have worked.
Yeah, I mean, why couldn't she? I don't know. It just seems like a lot of these people just want to be victims about everything. And it's like, you made a mistake, move on. You don't make a video about it and then try to get sympathy. And I don't know. There's just so many things like this now. It's like people are on camera 24/7.
Well, and like that story I told you, that girl I knew, she told a story about, and if you guys haven't heard it, Sasha's heard it, that She told me, oh yeah, when I was young, I'm in therapy now because I have PTSD. And I'm like, oh my God, why? What happened? Well, I was sexually assaulted when I was 13. I'm like, oh God. And, you don't really have to tell me the story. And so she said, yeah, I was 13. There was a 15-year-old and he liked me. I didn't really like him, but he came up to me and he kissed me. And I pulled away and I went into my bedroom and I'm like, oh, great. Story's going to get really grim. And I assume he followed her in there and forced himself on her. No, no, that was it. That was the whole story. He stole a kiss from her and that was it. She went in her bedroom and that was it. And I'm not saying what he did was right, but now she's seen as therapist and she's a recovering victim from a sexual assault. And she's all part of that therapy culture now.
I'm sorry, it's just really funny. But you're right, like that is like sadly a thing with women now. Like almost all my female friends are either on some kind of pill or they're seeing a therapist. And I don't know, I just don't get it. Well, I had a gay friend and he saw a therapist too, but they never seem to fix any of their problems and they keep paying all this money. And it's like maybe that's like one of my friends has money problems and she goes to this therapist, I think like maybe once a week. And it's kind of pricey. And it's like, why don't you just stop going and save your money? And that could help you pay off some of your bills and that could maybe make you feel better. And it's like, it's kind of like there's things you need to do, but I think it's therapy. Maybe it could be good for some people. I mean, people think it does good, but it seems like they kind of encourage everybody to be in therapy now. Like I hear all these ads, like we think you're fucked up. You should really go talk to somebody. We're here for you. And there's just so much of this now. We're just trying to push pills. I had to go to the doctor today and I won't tell the whole story, but I was kind of like short with the nurse. She's like, are you depressed? And it's like, oh, so they can try to put you on drugs for that because that's what they do now. But yeah, and everybody's a victim, like you said. I mean, he was 15, she was 13. He didn't do anything, kissed her. I mean, get over it. You weren't raped. Like you weren't held at gunpoint. I could see something like that, like having to go to therapy or something. But like, ooh, I mean, are we so soft now as a culture? Like it's just crazy.
Well, yeah, and she's been taught like, oh, well, you have to ask for consent before you kiss a girl, and he didn't ask for consent, so then she was a victim. She's been taught that, and so she's internalized that, and it's something that I've noticed. I think is more common this new generation, but at least on X, they all like to brag about their mental illnesses. That's something like very trendy, especially women. They always like to say how they have these various mental illnesses, and they seem to brag about them on X.
No, that's true too. Like I have quite a few female friends in real life, and all of them have like ADD, ADHD, some form of whatever. Yeah, and they take all these tests, and I don't know. I think it's a way to sell people drugs. I think it's like the South Park. Long ago, there was a South Park episode about ADD, and did you see that episode? Where they gave them all these drugs because they listened to a guy read Great Gatsby and they couldn't stay awake and they fell asleep and they were like, you all have ADD, and they start giving the kids all Ritalin and you realize it's a scam because that's kind of when that shit started, like drugging kids. At least when I was a kid in the 80s, so I grew up in the 80s, I don't remember any of my friends being on pills for anything. And then now my friend Brandon said that they had him on Ritalin, I think, but his parents did at some point, but he's like the only person I knew that grew up in that time period that was on like drugs. Like now it's really common that a lot of these kids are on drugs and now they're going after like middle-aged women too, or even young women, it seems like, are on a lot of drugs and I don't get it.
Yeah, and I think it's a really insult to the whole term PTSD, and even that term. George Carlin used to do a routine. Originally, it was called shell shock in World War One. You just be because of all the artillery fire, destroy your brain. Then in I think in either like yeah, I think it was World War II, it was combat fatigue or Korea. Then they renamed it PTSD. It's funny how they'd have all these new euphemisms. But it meant originally to be, you were in a real horrific situation. It didn't have to be combat, but that's where it came from. You see your buddy's head blown off, and that's going to stick with you forever. You wake up in the middle of the night screaming. Or maybe if you're a victim of a real violent crime, yeah, I could see how that causes PTSD. But a 15-year-old sneaking a kiss, I mean, come on, this is calling that PTSD is really an insult to people that have PTSD.
It is. I think it's all part of this greater victim culture too. But, when I was younger, like me and my friends, we did drugs to get high. We didn't do drugs to like, oh, we have to be on these because we have all these issues and problems. And it wasn't like that you have to depend on something every day. It'd be just like recreational, like you go to somebody's house and smoke a joint or whatever. But now it's like people are on all these drugs that mess with the serotonin in their brains, and I don't know. It seems like a lot of people are unhappy considering how much good things we do have. I mean, I get mad about stuff too, but it's not like the old days where you had to like wash your laundry on a rock. Like we should be happy for technology. In a lot of ways, we're living in a time that's kind of nice as far as having things that can make your life easier.
Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, wrote about that in his theory, and I kind of agree maybe with it, as we as humans aren't really designed to have the society that we have now. We're more designed to be in smaller tribes. And we were even talking about that in the car, not Ted Kaczynski, but Sasha was talking about when she was a kid growing up in Rockford, everyone knew each other. There was a sense of community. They went to a church and everyone looked for each other. Now everyone's anonymous where you live, from most places anyway. And there's not this sense of bond anymore that I think we as humans have, right or wrong, have developed. And that's one of the horrible things about multiculturalism and diversity. It breaks those bonds that I think are necessary to keep us happy as humans.
No, it is. It's really nice. Like when I was a kid, we knew everyone in the neighborhood, or at least on our street. And we were kind of part of a community. We did have a church. And I mean, I didn't go to church with any of my neighbors or anything, but you go over their house and hang out. And now it's so different. I don't even want to know my neighbors at all. And like where I live, it's like they're just kind of like, I had this neighbor, he's gone finally, but he would just sit out there and smoke and cough at like 4 a.m. And he'd talk really loud. Hey, what's going on at like 7 a.m. And it's like, dude, just go inside, shut the fuck up. When I was a kid, though, it was different because you had yards and people weren't right next to you. So maybe it's just different living in apartments. But yeah, the demographics were nice. There was low crime. You could ride your bike on the street. At least our neighborhood was low crime. But now it's a lot different and people don't know anybody. And I don't know, people have just kind of, I don't know. I don't say people have changed. I guess they haven't. It's just things are different now.
Well, it's a low trust community when you get diversity in there in the mix. And that's part of the reason I want homelands. It's just not for the GDP or anything like that. It's so you have that connection. And I think that's important for our spiritual and mental well-being. Because obviously things aren't going well when more than half the women are on antidepressants. Something is not right. I mean, they're not living according to their nature. And I think we need to be upfront about that. And we're not, because the propaganda, the Hollywood and the media and the schools have told women they have to live in a way that's not really meant for their nature. And even that girl that was complaining about her Me Too experience, she was pushed into a situation that was supposed to be empowering, but she didn't really find it empowering in real life. So I think we're going to have to relook at that. And I think eventually we'll go back to more normal and understand certain things that eternal truths we've gone away from, but they were eternally true for a reason. And we thought we could go beyond our biology and truth, and that has been a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I hope things can get better too, but I don't know. So many people are just so dumb and brainwashed, and like the election has really shown how dumb people are. Like Mark Dice, he's done this multiple times, but him and I think Blair White and then Don Lemon all went where they asked people like different questions. Well, like the Don Lemon one and the Blair White one, they were asking people, are you going to vote for Trump or Harris? And then the other one, oh shit, I kind of like lost track of what I was going to say here. The surveys, but they were asking like who you're going to vote. And then Mark Dice asked people if they knew who Joe Biden was. And there were people that didn't know who Joe Biden was. So people have gotten a lot stupider, excuse me. And so, I mean, how do you not know who the president is? It doesn't give me a lot of hope. And when you talk to people in real life, people are totally clueless about everything that's going on.
Yeah, most people shouldn't be allowed to vote. That's why I'm opposed to democracy. It's a really bad form of government, and I think it's the worst form of government. And the founding fathers agreed with me, so I'm always cringe when, like Joe Biden or Harris, our democracy. And well, our democracy is a horrible system. It's the worst ever. It ends up into tyranny because then the mob starts to determine what you can say and confiscates your property, raids the treasury. It ends up in disaster without exception. The ancient Greeks knew that too. I'd rather any day have a monarchy over democracy. Democracy is a horrible form of government. So we're starting to see that. And we were set up not as a democracy, but as a constitutional republic, was protected certain rights, like your right to speak and so forth. So yeah, that is pretty bad. So, Sasha, do you have anything else? I'm kind of out, but if you have something else, we can go on.
No, I'm good if you are. It's getting late. You're probably exhausted. You look tired.
I might. I got my I got my second win, so that was good. I hope I wasn't too tired tonight. I was tired before the show, but I got in the show, and I've had a lot of fun tonight, Sasha. This actually worked well, us being in the same room. Once we get used to muting the mics together. So thank you for being here, Sasha. Any final words?
No, it was kind of nice doing it this way because it's more comfortable than trying to squish over in that chair. Like, it's kind of nice just to go back and forth. Sometimes I felt like I was rambling, so sorry if I rambled. Usually Paul dominates the show, kind of.
Yeah. So this is actually a better thing. We go back and forth, give you a good chance to speak. And guys, thank you. And KMax, we will go over your list here at another night when we just do Rumble or X. We just can't show music and stuff on YouTube because of their stupid copyrights. So, but it's been fun, Sasha, and thank you guys. And Monday I'm back doing shows, and other than that, I'm off for the weekend. And if you haven't joined our roundtables, I don't know if you've seen, Sasha, they've grown. I got more people, and I think the roundtables are getting really good. So we had a great one tonight, and thank you for everyone that participated in that.
Oh, and don't forget, we have a P.O. Box 8093, Fayetteville, Arkansas 72703. Paul always forgets to tell people, but we like to get your letters and hear from you guys. And we'll share it on Night Owls.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, and love you guys. It's 870 people here late at night. It's great to be here with you, and you guys have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye bye.